everybody, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie, and together we are Think a Theme, and we're back for another episode of 10, out of 10, where we said we were going to rate our entire collection out of 10.
We did.
And that was an ambitious goal.
It's happening little by little, though.
Is it though?
We're chipping away at it. We are.
Yes, but we are never sure if we're going at the velocity at which our collection is actually growing. But, you know...
I feel hopeful. I feel like
I do, because
maybe 30% of what's here is like newish and stuff. A lot of this is like proper, has been in the collection for a while.
And that's what I was going to say, is this is the perfect opportunity in that little space between where games start being released for Gen Con and Essen and all those new games start rolling in. There's this little bit of a, not like there's still new games coming out, but a much slower pace right now. So it's given us the opportunity to get back and revisit some of the older games in our shelf, which has been so fun. And let's get straight into it with 10 more games. Why don't we start with you? Yeah.
I'm not starting with an old game. I'm starting with a brand
very new game. After all that, this is very new.
Let's start with Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs. Now, Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs is meant to be a very almost pocket size. I guess you could sort of put this in a pocket if you have a pocket that's wide enough. It is very, very tiny. If you know, like obviously, you know, it's a Gloomhaven experience, quite literally shrunken down into a tiny box. And so what's happening in this game is you have been shrunk in a, Honey Has Shrunk the Kids style game. So you and also some of the mercenaries around have been shrunk because you, like, the story is you kind of were after this legendary, I think she's a sorcerer that can kind of make you into a hero. But, a lot of people have been doing this. So as a way of keeping people out, she's like, you know what, I'm just going to shrunk people. And then, they'll
shrink
leave.
People.
Shrink people, not shrunk people. Shrink people, and then they'll leave me alone. And so now you're in a teeny tiny size, and you have to figure your way to get to this sorceress to unshrink you, make you proper full size.
She should have shrunk you and then put you under a cup or something. Because you're just running around.
That's doubly mean. I feel like she was just like one layer mean, and like you can still go about your life if you put them in that. Anyways, so in this game, it's attempting to bring the Gloomhaven experience into a very, very small box, and everything is really miniature. So you're actually working your way through a story, through a series of cards that are kind of like the campaign, so to speak, because it is kind of taking you on a bit of a narrative. You have a range of characters to choose from as then your character. They all have different abilities and very different decks. So very much Gloomhaven style. You're going to be using you start out with your set of cards which have combinations of top and bottom actions, and so for every round you're going to be picking a pair of cards, one of which you're going to be using the top action, and for the other one you use the bottom action, and you're trying to essentially use your cards the best way you can to sort of go through all the different battles and challenges. Most of it is really just battles. So you're essentially, the way it kind of works is you have a bit of a story and battle ensues, and then you have a little bit of a story and then battle ensues. And so that's probably my main, I think the main draw of this is my main criticism as well, because it's like and this is a personal preference thing. I don't personally enjoy just like battling. I really do like that sort of top and bottom action puzzle, which we actually did enjoy in Frosthaven as well, because we hadn't experienced it before, and it's like, oh, this is quite a cool mechanic.
And the way that your cards retire as well, and you don't want to run out of cards, that is still present in this tiny version. This is also only a solo experience.
I should have said that.
Yeah, so it's not a cooperative experience like Gloomhaven itself. This really is meant for just one player to choose their character and then play out these battle scenarios. I think it's so impressive what they did with the production for this. It's really clever, the use of all of the different things in the box. There's little dials that are in there. There's these little
your sort of health tracking.
Yeah, there's these little double layered boards where you can slot different like mercenary kind of skills in there.
The actual
cards.
Enemies that you're battling against, their stats and what it is that they're going to be doing, like that's on their cards, and then it also gives you the ability, so you're always going to be rolling a die to figure out whether it's a -0 or plus, and that determines their either their their initiative as well as what is it that they're doing with that,
Yes.
but also how effective their attack, for example, was. Same was with you.
Yeah, but I was also really impressed by the way that the story deck, after you've read the narrative, you flip over the card and it becomes the map for the scenario. So everything that they've done here is very much geared at putting as much experience in a tiny box, and also not just packing it in with things you need to read and do, but also the way that it comes to life on the table is much more substantial than what you would expect from this tiny box because of the dials, because of the double layered boards. It gives you a little bit of table presence that you would see more than if it was just a deck of
really
cards.
teeny tiny micro minis as well that for your characters, and then it's sort of color cubes for the enemies.
So I did have one game of this, not enough to rate it. Maggie played it much more than I
you
did.
wouldn't have thought so from all the information that you were given. I thought you were going to go in and rate it.
Because I do want to impress that even though this is not really a game for either of us, it is really impressive what they've done. I'm like super excited for people who love Gloomhaven to get their hands on this because it's such a cute little microscopic way to, because Gloomhaven is such a beast. So the fact that they've gone and done this is really
It's a very accessible way of just kind of going, get started into the world and sort of see how you like it. Having said that though, I really loved the Dice tutorial. So there's a sort of digital tutorial of walks you through how to do everything. Well, not everything, like how to kind of get going. That was really good. But I did find there were a lot of sort of edge scenarios and even some of the icons that weren't covered in the reference sheet or even in the rule book. And even when I went so there was a little bit of struggling if you're not familiar with Gloomhaven. So that's hopefully something that a lot of the rule books, the broader rule book is electronic. So I'm hoping that will be sort of addressed. So overall, my rating for this is going to be a bit lower than usual. It's actually going to be a 7. But that's not because it's not a good game. It's just not my kind of game because it is very much a just like battle, like constantly going into battle and figuring out, okay, how am I going to work out these, these enemies and the way they move and the way, whether they have this range or not and who should I tackle first. That's not something that I tend to enjoy. Yeah. But if that is something, so it's the same, like, for example, with Too Many Bones, that was the same issue that I have with it. Again, like, they are excellent games. They're just not my or our kind of style game.
Yeah, and in Frosthaven, for example, you're collecting resources and you're building buildings, so there's a little bit more to focus on. This is very, very battle focused. So just keep that in mind when working out whether it's for you or not.
So it's Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs.
After we said we're covering old games, I've got another new game. This one is the newest card game by Bombix. So Bombix have been on a bit of a roll lately. A lot of people love Sea, Salt and Paper. And then, of course, they had Kanar, which was a fantastic card game that we really enjoy, particularly on Board Game Arena. But this is their latest card game called Pixies. And Pixies is a completely different type of card game. In this card game, you're going to be building out a tableau in front of you of the numbers 1 to 9 in 3 rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But you start with nothing in your tableau. And all you're going to be doing on your turn is drafting from a market of cards. You're just going to be selecting one of those cards. And according to what number it is, so if you draw the number 2, well, then you'll place it in the spot where 2 goes in your tableau. Pretty easy so far. Then next time you get a 2, that 2 comes into your tableau and you have to decide, do I want to keep the 2 that I originally put down in my tableau or the new 2, because one of them needs to be flipped face down and then you put the new one on top. And that's what's called validating a card. And once you've validated the card in your tableau, you'll be able to score the face value points of that card. So by doing that, I now have 2 points. However, when you draft your third card, so for example, if I was to draft a third 2, that space can no longer be used. And so it goes face down somewhere else in your tableau and starts to fill up the empty spots. Now, all players are going to be collecting cards until someone completes their tableau. That is, all 9 spaces have a face up or face down card in them. that is going to trigger the end game. And then there are many other ways you can get points or lose points as well. So some of the cards do have points that are just marked on them with these little symbols that you're going to collect. There are also some cards that have crosses on them that are going to be worth negative points. And you're also trying to chain the same colored cards in your tableau by placing them orthogonally adjacent to one another. So when I'm deciding which two I want to put down, maybe I want to put the yellow one on top because I've already got a chain of yellow cards, and every round that is going to increase in points, the number of points you get for having that chain of colored cards. Really simple game. It's super easy to teach, and that has meant I have carried this game around with me to when we went to Dice Tower West. We were teaching this a lot. But since then, I've had it on me and I've taught it at my workplace. I've taught it to friends when they've just been hanging around between bigger games. It is so simple to teach, and actually a lot of people have really enjoyed this game. So for me, like, the accessibility of this actually exceeds potentially the fun I have playing it. Like, I enjoy playing it, but it's not probably as fun for me as Cana. It's probably more fun for me than Sea Salt and Paper because controversially is that's not like one of my favorite card games. Never really resonated as much as it did with other people. But Pixies is just I don't know, it has a lot of table presence, people understand it easily.
I love the artwork in this. It's actually photos of, I can't remember the name of the artist. Is it
Sylvain
Trabot? And so this artist uses found objects to create these little critters, like, that are, so they might be with bits of nature or bits of, like, a little sprig of, some leftover piece of junk of something. But then there are these really cute and kind of creepy but adorable little creatures, which are the pixies, essentially. And every time, like, I'm sort of playing and I'm like, oh, look at this card. Like, I just really enjoy that as well.
I love that whole philosophy of wandering and collecting, like, found items and creating little pixies out of them. And I just love that Bombix commissioned them to do the artwork for this, because it could be anything.
It could be anything.
Honestly could be anything.
It's a fairly abstract kind of game.
It is not thematic at all.
There's no actual, it's like colors and number sequences, and that's it. But having said that, I actually also really enjoy it. I don't know if it's just like it kind of drew me in with those photos of the little kind of pixies, but I actually, because it's so straightforward, there is a little bit, like, a fair bit of luck in terms of, like, what you end up being able to draw. But I really enjoy the different layers of scoring as well.
And there is a tiny, now having tested this with so many different groups, there is a teeny tiny, sometimes a little bit more than tiny bit of hate drafting in this game, because you can very easily look at the tableau and be like, I'm not leaving that for you.
That's too good for you. I might just,
so that happens a little bit as well, but it's not a particularly mean game. Really easy to get to the table. Pixies, I gave it a score of 7.3. As I said, I thoroughly enjoy teaching this game, probably more than I enjoy playing it. I just think it's a really cool idea. The way, way that they've designed this game is cool.
I really enjoyed it. I'm actually gonna give this an 8. I just have a lot of fun with it. Like,
that is really high.
I just enjoy it. I don't know what it is. Like, Bombix, like, their game, because even Elawa was another game that something about it just resonates with me. So Pixies.
They are doing really interesting things with card games. I really like that.
I absolutely love. I agree that Sea Salt and Sea Salt and Paper? I didn't connect with that one as much, but the others.
One thing that they are doing with these tiny boxes, same with Sea Salt and Paper before Pandasaurus got it, is they are really great because they're so compact, but don't close them without cards in them because they get stuck.
Never be able to open it again.
Never be it forever. You'll never play Pixies ever again.
All right.
Ever.
We're moving on?
We're moving on.
Okay, the next game is a game that was actually on my most anticipated list recently, and I did get to try, we both got to try a game of it at Gen Con last year, and it's Avant-Card by Resonant Games. So Avant-Card is, you are an art collector, but really the way it plays out is fairly abstract. It's a deck building game where you're collecting all these different, where you're building your deck by playing playing a string of cards from your hand, which are obviously the cards are a combination of colors and numbers. And the way you string them together is by playing matching, as you're stringing them, matching either the same number or the same color, so that you can kind of swap from colors to numbers. And as the number of cards that you manage to string together becomes the amount of money that you have to spend. And so say, for example, if I manage to do 5 of them, I have $5 that I can spend. So I can buy cards which are worth up to 5, or a combination of cards, and the cards are all worth their number essentially. So a number 5 card will be worth 5 coin. So they also have, the next layer of this is they also have different abilities. So all the cards that you purchase will also trigger different patron abilities. So they'll help you kind of break the rules a little bit to essentially get hands where you can make more money or generate more money. The reason you want to generate more money is whenever you're able to generate $6 or more in one hand, you're going to get trophies. And at the end of the game, it's going to be whoever has the most trophies who will be the winner. But the more money you're able to generate, the better the conversion rate into trophies. So for example, with 6, you get 1 trophy, but if you manage to make 8, you're going to get 2 trophies. 10, you're going to get 3. So it kind of, it improves or increases that way. So those patron abilities that kind of break the rules a little bit, there's also a variety of them, so you can kind of mix and match, and it gives you more replayability. So this is a game that we actually did get to play like multiplayer, but I've also gotten the chance to play it solo now. So I think the main thing with this is I was really anticipating, because I love the artwork in this, like the actual cards in them are great. I love deck builders, and it's a very accessible version of a deck builder.
And Maggie was the one that was like, you must back this game, and Maggie very rarely asked me to back anything, but so I was like, wow, okay, it certainly left an impression. So I backed this for her.
So we backed this one, and when I had a play of it at Gen Con, I was like, this is exactly what I thought it would be. Now, interestingly, playing it at a higher player count, I found that the downtime was greater as I'm waiting for other people to kind of figure out, okay, so playing out your sort of string of cards happens simultaneously, but the purchasing kind of happens in player order. And so that I found that it took a bit longer than I would want it to. So I would probably play this more at the lower player counts. Particularly solo, because what I found that was most intriguing to me of this was the puzzle of how do I really optimize this with the different powers of these patrons that I have available. So solo, I actually really enjoy my experience with this more than multiplayer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I have a mixed relationship with this game. I'm trying to think about why it doesn't quite click. Like, I enjoy it, but I don't think I loved it from the first play as much as Maggie. I struggled with just what I was trying to do more than Maggie, for sure, with the puzzle itself. But then since playing it a lot multiplayer, I haven't played it solo, just multiplayer. I think the thing with it is that I love deck building. Like, we enjoy that as a mechanic. But in something like Dominion, when you're purchasing cards, it tells you on the card what that card does. And I feel there's a bit of a disconnect for me in looking at the cards in my hand and being like, a pink 2. What does a 2 do? And having to reference the variable setup for the patrons. And that's kind of good and bad, because in a good way, you're using very few cards and you can mix and match them in different ways. In a bad way, you have to do that thing where you're looking at your hand and going, what does that do again? And continuing to check. So that creates a little bit of friction in the smoothness of the game for me. So it kind of sits in like do I just want to get out a bigger deck builder and play that? Or do I want to play like a card game that has less friction? So it sits in a weird middle ground for me. But I gave it a 7.2. So, similar to Pixies, like I'll happily play it. What
did I give that? So I actually will give this a 7.8, because I actually thought it would be higher. But then, the experience of the multiplayer and it sort of feeling a little bit more slowed down kind of brings it down a bit for me. Obviously, it's still a fairly abstract experience, which again, so it's not a super thematic kind of experience, but I absolutely love the artwork. I also love the way everything is packaged. So everything just sort of unfolds and then the market is ready to go.
Unrolls.
It just unrolls, and then the market is ready. Same with the patron cards and same with the player deck. So it just comes into all these, these sort of different sets of packets that everything unfolds.
Smart design.
Beautiful production as well. So that's Avant Card.
Okay, what do we have next? Well, next, actually, I'm quite excited about this because finally, we are going to talk about the Flat Out Games AEG trio of Calico, Cascadia, and Verdant. And then compare it to a new game that just came out that is very similar to those three if you enjoy this type of game. So firstly, let's start with the classic and the game that started it all. Because Calico was the first review that we ever did on Thinker-Thema. So this is like a full circle moment where we are here back again talking about Calico for almost 4 years later. But Calico, if you haven't played it already, is a very cool Sudoku-like puzzle where you are going to be drafting different hexagons and you're going to be placing them into a dual layer player board, and there are objectives on this player board, and the objectives are going to define what you want to surround that objective tile with. So for example, one of the classic ones is you want to have all different things around the objective. And what do I mean by different things? Well, different colored tiles, but different patterns on those tiles as well. And that is really hard to do because there's only 3 of each tile in the bag. And so you're trying to draft and you have to play a tile and draft a tile every turn. And you're trying to work out the right sequence and how long you want to hang on to the idea of potentially getting both objectives done, because you can just go for color or just go for pattern, or you can try and do both and be really ambitious. And that's what I loved about this game, is the level of ambition you can put into trying to get all 3 of those objectives done.
Till you reach that point where you're like, am I giving up on my dreams? And like, I'm going to have to give up on my dreams.
The other component in this game is that you will have patterns or clusters of, groups of different patterns that you want to collect in order to get these little cute little cats to come and sit on your quilts. I didn't even say that you're building out a quilt in a calico pattern. You want to put cats on there as well, or you want to collect 3 of the same colored tile together, because then you get to put these colorful little buttons on. So these are all just ways of building out extra points. But the thing that makes this game difficult is just trying to do everything at once. But other than that, it's a fairly multiplayer solitaire kind of game, aside from the fact that someone might take the tile that you've been waiting for the whole game to come out, and then they take it, you're like, why?
Pretty devastating.
It is so devastating.
See it and you're like, oh no. And sometimes people are like not even invested in it. They just have to take something. They're like, I guess I'll have this. And you're like, everything just sort of crumbles down.
And what's been really interesting about playing this game now is that, all this time later, we've probably played 1,000 games since then. This used to be, this would have probably made it at the time into my top 10 games, and now it's like a whole different universe for us. We've played so many games, but revisiting this, I remembered what I really loved about it. However, I was more annoyed about the mitigation of luck in this game than I ever was 3.5 years ago when we were first playing this game. So that's, not being able to affect the randomness of the tiles that get drawn. And yes, you can kind of mitigate it again a little bit, but you only get to hold on to 2 tiles at once. And so your ability to affect your luck is kind of, it's challenging. It's challenging. And so it does bring it a little bit down in my estimation. I'm still giving it an 8 because I think it is a fantastic puzzle game that everybody should try at least once. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is in many people's top puzzle games.
Yeah, well, it's a quintessential brain-burny game.
It is. Great tile-laying game.
It's relatively easy to teach because, what you're doing is fairly straightforward any given turn, but the actual puzzle itself is tough. This is going to be a 7.8 for me because, again, I appreciate, I still think it's super brain-burny. It's a great design, but it's ultimately quite
It's a beautiful design too.
Beautiful as well. I love the double layer board and how everything just kind of fits into it. Quite nicely.
So colorful.
Yes.
It's
the
really
buttons, everything as you're putting things on it. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, and it doesn't add too many layers of complexity to that puzzle either. It's just nice enough. It's good. So that is Calico. So the next game by the same team was Cascadia.
Okay. Cascadia. So in Cascadia, we are drafting combinations of habitat tiles with tokens that represent different animals. And so in every game, you're going to have a different combination of possible scoring for all the different animals. So they all will score. So you have like bears and salmon and hawks, and they all score differently. And again, that will vary depending on which scoring card you use for that game. So a big part of the puzzle is those tiles that you're drafting, that you're having to add into your sort of land mass. They will, one, obviously, they have to be like attached to your existing landmass. They all have they have different types of terrain. So there's a different element of trying to connect and make really long versions of each type of terrain. But also each one of those tiles has only certain animals that animal tokens that can be put on top of them. So there's that other element of where am I going to place this? Knowing that then when I get that token, or if I have managed to gain that animal token, how am I going to strategically place it so it's going to score for that animal's scoring sort of combination or arrangement. So again, it's another game where what you're doing is fairly simple. Any given turn, you're kind of drafting and adding to your the sort of tiles that you're building, but then the actual scoring is where all the complexity sort of comes in. Mm-hmm. So obviously, recently we played the roll and write version. We got to kind of cover that, but obviously this being the original, it's again very, very straightforward in terms of how it, like, you just have to grab it and put it. But yeah, like, how did you find like replaying it as well, like recently? Because we replay all these stuff to make sure that it's like, this is still sort of fresh in our mind.
After playing it recently, I feel exactly the same way about it as I did when we first got it.
Okay.
But unfortunately, that's nowhere near as high in my estimation as Calico.
Yes.
So as the follow-up, I found that there's something about this game that I appreciate its design, and I can see that a lot of people would love it, but it's a very, very cruisy style game, and it's quite long for what it is.
It is,
and it's probably not that much longer than Calico, but in my mind it feels longer. There's something about it that feels quite long, but also it just never excited me from day dot, and that is I think it won Game of the Year one year. So it's a really, really popular game. But yeah, for me, the rating of this one is so Calico was an 8. Cascadia I've given a 7. So it's I can see why people enjoy it. It's not a bad design. It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. It's a 7 for me as well, for similar reasons. Obviously, again, it's a fairly kind of abstract game, but yeah, I find that, I don't know why, like, even though you have all the variety of all those sort of puzzles, it still doesn't really like engage me as much. Yeah.
Maybe it's like not stressful enough.
And a lot of people, possibly, I mean, like I feel like it's not super tense during, even though I can never still do well in it.
Yeah, so it's hard to do well, but it's not as tense as Calico, because Calico you're always like, no, I'm going to have to give up on this.
Yeah, that's true. And it was interesting because like we were actually playing this multiplayer recently, and someone said at the end of it, they're like, I have no idea how any of you have done. Like, so the whole time that you're playing, like, it's not until you start kind of adding things up, because you might, like, when you kind of glance over, there's so many different layers of scoring going on that is like, so it is very kind of multiplayer solitaire. Anyway, so that's Cascadia.
And now the third in the series is a game called Verdant. So Verdant, verdancy, about the bright green plants that you're trying to water in your house. That's what this game is all about. Maggie and I can't keep a plant alive.
No.
Ever.
There's like green thumbs are one of the types of tokens in here. We do not have those in real life.
We have green nothing. That's just no.
We have probably, like, what's the opposite of, like, we have like a dry, dead thumb.
I don't know. You know those plants where people are like, no one can kill those plants. We can kill those plants.
Yeah. Is that a challenge?
Yeah. I remember when
trying not to, like, we.
Yeah, I bought an air plant, killed that also. Anyway, moving on to Verdant. So in Verdant, again, this brings back the Cascadia like drafting conundrum of, well, I really want that card, but I don't really want that token, or I really want that token, but I don't really want that card. Too bad, because you have to draft both at the same time. And now you have 2 rows of cards. One row of cards represents different plants that you're going to put into your house. The other row of cards represents rooms that you're going to build out your house with, and you're trying to build a tableau of 15 cards cards, 3 rows of 5 cards each. Now, the placement of these cards really matters because every one of the plants in the game, and there's different varietals of plants, they are going to want different exposure to sunlight, just like when you buy a plant and you ignore all advice and you put it in the sunniest spot when it wants shade.
Full sun. Yeah.
Yeah. If you can put a plant in the right type of room with the right lighting condition, i.e. putting it adjacent in this game, you will add verdancy to that plant or greenery to that plant. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to get as much verdancy on that card as the goal is on that plant card. And once you've done that, you're going to score the full amount of victory points on that card for achieving it. Plus, you get to put a really cute little pot onto the card that shows that that plant is now complete. You also have many other ways to make verdancy. So there are little like fertilizer, there's a little trowel, and there's all these little plant related things that are going to allow you to add more verdancy to the plants that you're trying to complete. Plus there's also these items that you can draft, which are the tokens. These tokens are going to go onto the room card. So they are pets and household items like a lamp or something. And you want to try and match the token color to the card color. If you can do that, then you're going to double the bonus of the room card, which is to have that type of plant in the room. So you're thinking about many things. Where do I put the plant so it gets the right lighting condition? Where do I put the plant so that it matches the type of room scoring for that type of plant?
Yeah.
And then also, how do I increase the verdancy of all my plants using fertilizer and things? So there's also like a way to mitigate against some of the luck of the draw in the game. So unlike Calico, in both Cascadia and Verdant, they did bring in a way to refresh the market. In this case, it is collecting little green thumbs, which is really cute. But the artwork is beautiful in this game.
I love all the different house plants. I mean, we'd be like, oh, that's a cool plant. It's like, maybe we should get it. And the plants are like, no, please don't get us. Please don't. Please. It's certain death.
But I like Verdant. Again, it's I do. I like it a bit more than Cascadia. I gave it a 4. A 4.
My
that would
goodness,
be
that would be terrible.
That would be the lowest rating ever. A 7.2. Yeah, so just a little bit higher. Again, not as high as Calico, but so Calico is my favorite of the 3.
I'm in the same boat. So it's a 7.3 for me. I really, really love the artwork of this one. I find it really relaxing. I find it more engaging than Cascadia. But I do find the little bit of admin that you're doing every time someone takes a card and a token, and then you're kind of replenishing. And
you're adding green thumbs onto the card that wasn't
taken.
Yes,
correct. Yes. So like that, I always find that it's like I'm so thankful if there's someone else around the table who's doing it, because I get so that you were you often do because I get so distracted. I'm like, oh no, and what was I doing? So but I really enjoy my time with this game. Every time I find that Calico's more tense and more more satisfying from a kind of gamer's perspective. But I really, really find this this is the kind of the pleasant yet engaging one for me.
So that's the ranking of those 3 older games. I'd actually love to hear in the description what is your favorite of those that trio. And now want to tell you about a new game that scratches the same itch as those 3 games. So if those 3 games are like your favorite in the collection, then you might want to check out Harmonies. Harmonies is a new game that has a similar puzzly feel, but the drafting is instead tokens that you're going to be placing out to build out different habitats in on this just single layer cardboard grid-like board.
Yeah. The tokens are very satisfying wood, though.
They are, and they've got little screen printing on them. But it's more similar to, say, an Azul, where you are going to draft a group of tiles that are a group of tokens that are randomly drawn out of the bag and placed around in lots of different groups. And each of these represent different types of
terrain.
Well, terrain, yeah. So you can use them to build things. So you can build buildings, you can build mountains, you can build trees.
Yeah, so it's not just terrains, it's like also like resource or elements.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to think of what the right word is. But essentially, there are pieces of trunk or wood that you can build to make, trees of different height. And there are, bits of river that you're going to put down, but you can't stack those. You've just got to make the longest river chain that you can. And so each of these elements in and of themselves are going to score differently according to what they want to be next to. For example, a mountain doesn't score unless it's part of a mountain range.
Yes.
So there's this base level built-in point. But that's not the interesting thing about this puzzle. The interesting thing about this puzzle,
it's more layers. Layers on top of layers.
Are the cards. So you're going to have a market of cards, and each of those represents an animal that is, again, beautifully illustrated.
Gorgeous artwork.
Gorgeous artwork.
Yes.
And those animals want you to build a particular habitat that they want to live in. And so you can take one on your turn. You have the option to take one of these cards. You can have a maximum of 4 at any given time. And then you're going to place little cubes on these cards that represent the animals that are going to jump off that card and onto your habitat once you've met that habitat goal. So that might be, one example, they might want 2 little pieces of river and then a tree. If you can do that, then the animal's going to jump off and live on top of that tree.
Yeah.
But that, again, is not the interesting part about the puzzle. The interesting part about the puzzle is how the different cards and the different habitats interlock, because what you want to be doing is you want to be super efficient so that you can have multiple animals that are living in interlocking habitats. And that's where the puzzly bit really shines in this game, is like, if I'm opportunistic and I take that other animal card, that's actually going to work really nicely with what I'm building, because in that 2 river and a tree, one animal wants to live in the tree, the other wants to live in the river. Yeah. So it's very hard to explain in this abstract way.
That's the other thing, like with those animal cards, like there's multiple tokens on them. So you kind of want to try and make a kind of multiply the versions of that ecosystem combo so that you can get all of those tokens off that card, because the more tokens you get off that card, the more points that's going to be worth by the end of the game. So it's the combination of going, how do I make this work for me? And then what are all the different animal cards that are going to work? But also, all of those things are actually really highly thematic. So the type of animal that is attracted to a different combination of terrain, it makes sense. And the way the terrain sort of come together, and where, with the mountains, and when you're making a building, and, where they would want to be higher or lower, or and the types of materials that would be eligible to be the base of the building, all of that makes sense. So I found, because when something is so it just makes thematic, it's logical, I find it very easy to pick up. Yes. It's like you sort of explain it once, I'm like, I don't even have to reference, the only time that you reference is oh, that's right, how many points does that score for that? But not, what am I allowed to do together again? And no, that's actually, really, really, really smooth.
And it's all, it's an entire game about being optimally efficient, which I love. And half the time I'm thinking about beating my opponent, but a lot of the time I'm also thinking about, how do I beat my previous score?
Yeah. How to out-optimize your own kind of puzzle.
Yeah. And we played this for the first time, and I was like, it's pretty straightforward puzzle. It's fine. And then I played it more, and I'm like, I really like this game. And I played it more, and then Maggie started teasing me about, you love Harmonies.
You love this game. You know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about that Harmonies game. We should play that again. We should play with so-and-so. We should play with, you love Harmonies. You and Harmonies sitting up a tree.
Harmony Lane Tree.
We are very silly people.
Harmonies is a great game, and I highly recommend it if you enjoy those other games. I am tempted to rate it as high as Calico. I don't know if it'll stand the test of time. I'm very conscious of my recency bias of just enjoying new games, but there's something about the physicality of this game that, it looks beautiful on the table, but it's just really satisfying. More satisfying than probably Calico to build out your actual player thing in front of you with all these little tokens. So, I'm so torn.
What's your rating?
I think I have to give it an 8. It's a great game, and I'm really enjoying it. It's, for what it is, a lot of heavy thinking and a lot of cool puzzle.
But again, it's kind of like the same thing that we're attracted to Calico. It's like you don't have to go that heavy thinking. You can actually just keep it at the more basic layers and feel like I'm just going to focus on the terrains and the elements and just do that, or like one animal and that's it. So you can kind of go as hard or as easy or as hard as you want. So for me, it's a 7.9. So it is a little bit it's similar, but a little bit higher than.
I almost went 7.9, but my heart says 8, so 8 it is.
I love harmonies.
That is harmonies.
Oh, so should we go this way or that way?
Okay, we'll go this way next because I feel like I've been super excited, but I'm about to get even more excited because
goodness.
I've been waiting to include this on 10 out of 10. And I'm so excited to talk about Lorenzo Il Magnifico because we have never reviewed this on our channel and it is one of my favorite games of all time. Spoiler alert. Lorenzo Il Magnifico is a worker placement game, and worker placement is one of our favorite mechanisms in games. As much as, I think I'm going to evolve past it. Every time I come back to worker placement game, I'm like, so good. Yeah. But this one is one of the tightest worker placement games that I think we own. And the reason for that is because there's so many restrictions that are placed on you, but the most interesting thing is at the start of every round, the first player is going to roll a bunch of dice. So 3 dice to be exact. A bunch of them. 3 of them. A
whole lot of 3.
And those 3 dice are going to dictate the values of each of your workers of that color. So there's a white, an orange, and a black. And whatever you roll on those dice, that's going to be the value of that worker. And why that matters is because when you place a worker out onto a worker placement spot on the board, it has to be of a minimum value in order to go there. And so there are these columns of cards that you're going to be drafting, different types of cards, and the higher up those columns you go, for example, you need to have a higher dice value.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can affect those values, of course, by using this currency of purple servants that you're going to be collecting. I think they are called servants in the game. And you can spend those in order to change and, kind of mitigate against that luck. But then, interestingly, you also have this 4th worker. And this 4th worker always has a value of 0, which means you can't use it unless you have one of those purple servants to spend, and then you'll be able to place it in a spot that has a value of 1, but you really need to pump up its value in order for it to be useful. And all of this combined with this other really constraining factor in this game. So in this game, you are trying to build out tableau of cards. There are 4 different key types of cards, and you can choose to focus on whichever area you want. But 2 of the colored cards are going to be engines that you can run. So you can collect the cards, which are expensive, and you end up building up this tableau. And then you can go on a worker placement spot that's going to activate all those cards to give you additional resources, give you victory points, give you coins. And coins are very hard to come by in this game. But there's this other element of the church. In this game, the church is a harsh mistress and
Very
it wants
punishing.
you, it wants you to basically pay your dues to the church. Otherwise, you're going to face a penalty that will haunt you for the rest of the game. And this happens every second round. So at the beginning of the game, it is public information what the 3 punishments are going to be if you don't meet the requirements at round 2, 4, and 6. So in round 6, the punishment is something that's going to affect your end game victory points. In round 2 and 4, it's going to be something that's really drastically going to impact your ability to play this game.
Yeah.
And you also get the choice of whether, even if you've met the conditions, whether you pay it or not, because if you pay it in round 2 to the church, it's going to be even harder to get there in round 4.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time you're like, oh, which punishment can I actually deal with? Can I cope with?
Sometimes it's like, it's fine. I guess I'll just ignore that part of the game then if I'm going to be so restricted or limited or held back. Because I didn't pay my dues to the church.
And so this game is punishing. It is
so tense.
So tense, and turn order also really matters in this game because I remembered another element. When you're drafting from a column of cards of a particular type, if someone gets there before you, you have to pay $3 or three coins just to have the privilege of also going there to draft a card. And so this money economy is also really tight. It's a fascinating game. It's a wonderful design. I really, really love this game. And it's just every time you play it, everybody is just sitting there like
so stressful,
like
intense.
Oh, it doesn't bring out the best in Maggie, not gonna lie.
No, it really does. This should be in the updated version of games that made our relationship stronger.
She gets very aggressive and very tense.
I just immediately get so tense and so stressed. I'm like, what is coming over me? Like I need to check myself.
Yeah. And if you've watched the channel for a while, you'll know that a high level of interaction in games, which this one is quite interactive, because the whole time you're like, please don't do that, please don't do that. And then you're like, oh.
There's a lot of blocking. There's a lot of like, that card would be perfect, and now it's going to cost me 3 more, or someone's taken it, or then the things to activate, the spots to activate your production, like your engine, are again very, very finite and limited and restricted. And it's a little bit different with a more player count, but it's still quite punishing if you don't get there first. So.
Also, the tension in this game is palpable. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's a 9.4 for me. It is one of my most favorite games of all time. I just adore it. It's never, ever, ever, ever leaving our collection.
Okay, so it is a high score for me, but nowhere near as high. It's not what I would call a super thematic Euro.
Absolutely
It's very, very tense. Probably the most thematic thing is just how punishing the church is. Like, that's probably where it kind of ends. So it's an 8.2 for me. I do have a lot of respect for this game. Every time I'm playing it, it's super tense. It's super like satisfying from a gamer point of view. But it's not as high.
I love the ability to specialize as well. Yeah. So you can try out different strategies.
That's really fun.
Yeah, and everyone can take a different strategy and end up in a very similar place. So I love that game. That is Lorenzo El Magnifico.
There you go. So now the final...
No, second.
Yep. Oh, yeah, we still have another one. So you want to go over there?
After you.
Over here. Okay. So this one is Therabind. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't know. So I think is it Finishing Time is the translation. And it's all about workers and how you get the workers to spend their time. It's a worker placement game, but it's about relaxation. It's about how do you get your very stressed out workers to relax after work. So the whole game, you kind of have this relaxation track, and that's sort of like the main thing that you're trying to move along. But every end of the round, so you have a finite number of workers that you're kind of placing out into different relaxing or relaxation type activities. Some of them will allow them to like go on blind dates and get a partner, which is great because now it means that now you have a partnered worker that will be able to take different some of the relaxation activities require a partner, or will give you more relaxation if done with a partner. So you get to kind of enjoy even more if you do it with someone else. So the whole thing, so to speak, there is a motel as well.
There is. That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah.
At your phrasing.
Yeah, it was unintended, but applicable as well. So the whole game, it's a combination of you have your workers, you're trying to place them in these positions, but you're also trying to strike for better working conditions, like for example, fewer hours in the work week. Because every time the round finishes, they go to work and they get stressed out again. And every time they get stressed out again, your marker and the relaxation track is going to go way back. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of constantly pulling you back in a sort of 2-step forward, 16 steps back. So quite literally, because that's usually, I think, where it starts. So one of the things is going to be kind of going to the union and striking for better conditions. That's one of them. Another one of the conditions is pay equality. So in your gender pay equality. So usually at the start you don't have pay equality, and so when you're getting income, you're going to be penalized for that. So you're going to be losing income along the way. That's sort of the leakage that happens when you have a gender pay gap. So that's another one of the things that you can strike for. Mm-hmm. The other one is just better wages. So having more income. The other one is having, like, one of the other things that you get is strike tokens. So every time you have a new round, you're going to get strike tokens, which is the currency that you use to to improve these conditions, and the other one is having time off, so your leave, so your workers can go on vacation. So you start out with 0 weeks of vacation, and then that's another area that you can invest your strike tokens to increase the amount of it's opening up essentially a whole new area of worker placement spots where your workers can go on vacation and again get lots of relaxation points, and even more so if they go with their family, with their partner. So really interesting how it is actually. I love that you can always just stay home, and like that's the kind of the stress action, like send your workers, they just stay home and they get one relaxation, so it's not great, but that's always an option. Or then there's the bar, so they can go to the pub and they can either spend a bit of money and get relaxation, or they can work at the pub, in which case you gain money but it costs you relaxation because again they're working. So I love all the different kind of the combinations, a very accessible worker placement, because everything like it's quite light to teach and to kind of get playing, which means that you can kind of get going fairly quickly. It all makes very much thematic sense. All the different levers, it becomes an interesting puzzle. It's a bit of a grind, but it's a fun grind of going, okay, how am I going to get this, the relaxation? And I know it's going to go back, but it's like, how do I eventually get it to trigger end of game?
The key feeling that I have about this game is it was enjoyable because it's so snappy, so everyone's turns are really fast, but also the main thing you're thinking about is timing. Like this game is all about timing. And because of the fact that you have 2 options available to you really in any given turn, place a worker or strike. And depending on how close you are to finishing the race, because this game is a race to 40 relaxation, you need to time everything really carefully. Plus, the longer you can buy time by striking, the more likely it is that someone is going to have to retrieve all their workers, and all of a sudden all the really attractive worker placement spots have opened up to you again. So it's a very fast game, very fast game. Everyone's placing workers, retrieving workers, and you're grinding towards this 40 goal where you're going backwards, forwards until someone can get to 40. But the timing element is where the strategy that's where the strategy all comes in. The only thing I will say is that I enjoyed my first 3 games of this, and at that point I was really enjoying the flow of this game. At some point it starts to feel like the game is playing itself out a little bit, because
they're the most obvious best places that you can go to right now, because it's obviously fairly finite in terms of the locations.
And so everyone goes for the same things, everyone's buying time for the same reason, and there are slight nuances in what you can do, but really there's not a lot of variability in the game, so it doesn't have longevity for me, unfortunately. I gave it a 7.5, basically because I really enjoyed it. I really, if I was to get this out and teach it at a con or something, I just feel like everyone will instantly have a good time. It's a great game, but it's not a great repeatable game. For me personally.
For me, I actually really enjoyed this game. So this is an 8 for me.
Wow.
Because I was just so taken by the theme and the thematic, it's this little moments that you're like, of course, you do want to get that better, and you do want to, strike for this or get, improve it. So I had a great, every time I play it, it's I just find it's a fun grind for me. I really enjoy kind of figuring out that puzzle.
It works that out, that you love a grindy game.
A good grind, So I think, what else was I going to say with this one? I agree that it gets to a point where you don't, the replayability is you're still going to just feel like it's the same sort of game.
It needs some expansions. It desperately needs some expansions.
I think I don't know if it'll get them, because it's an older game, and I probably didn't really have the popularity that it would take for expansion to be released. The other thing is,
I don't think it's as old as the art would imply.
No, but that's I think that's the sort of 2F
2020
kind of artwork.
Aesthetic.
What is it? It's like 20. I need to double check.
It's not that old.
It's not that old. It's only a few years, couple of years. It does have a solo mode. I didn't enjoy it as much, because it is one of those you roll a die and then it tells you what positions it's going to be occupying, what it's doing. I didn't enjoy that as much, because it is kind of working out with an automa, which I just sort of found distracting, and it just took away from the experience and the flow of the game for me. So this is something that I would definitely only play multiplayer. But that's Theta Bend. I don't know if that's how you
it's a cool theme.
It is, yes.
Yeah. And the final game that we're going to talk about today is a really unusual 2-player game called Lacuna. Lacuna, and it says on the bottom here, a cozy game of mystical geometry. Now, this game is most famous for its packaging design, and I'll tell you why. This game is like a big salt shaker because the way you set up this game is inside there is a material board which you're going to spread out onto the table, which represents a lake. And then you are going to have all of these little flower tokens that are going to be inside this shaker, and you're going to just lift the lid and shake them out into an arrangement over this lake. So the setup is pretty fun in this game.
Yeah.
It's unlike anything else. But you have to distribute these flowers randomly, and what better way to do it? It's actually very, very clever.
Very practical.
So that's kind of what this game is known for. But what is the game about? Well, once you've set up this lake of all different flowers that are available, each player, it's a 2-player game only, each player is going to have a number of metal tokens or pieces that they are going to be placing out somewhere between 2 of the same flowers. So each flower, I can't remember, I think there's 6 of each flower in the game. Or 7?
Because it was
6
4,
or 7.
so if someone has 4, that's the majority.
That's the majority, so maybe it's 7. And what you're doing is you're going to, as long as there's a clear line that isn't interrupted by the other player's piece or your own pieces or another flower, so you can draw a straight line between them, then you put your piece there and that enables you to pick up both flowers. But what you're thinking about is where in that line between the 2 flowers are you placing your metal piece? Because why that matters is once we've played out all of our metal pieces, we're going to be clearing out the board, but there's going to be flowers left over. And then those flowers at the end of the that placement kind of stage are going to go to the player who is closest to them with their metal pieces. So when I'm evaluating between these 2 flowers, do I want to put my metal token at this end or this end? It depends on whether I'm going to be closer to other flowers that exist in this
left over.
space.
Once that token is when your marker is left over there.
Yeah. And what I love about this game is it comes with a ruler because at the end it's actually really deceptive to be able to just use your
eyeball
sight,
it. Eyeball.
And just be like,
closer.
oh, I'm closer.
Bring the ruler out. And you're like, okay, that's 5.5.
Final ruling is with the ruler.
6, yeah.
So then you collect all those pieces. Then you're going to get 1 point for every type of flower where you have the majority and the person with the most points wins. Very, very straightforward. It is it's so different to anything else that we have. It's very abstract, obviously, because it really is just about geometry and spatial awareness of getting closer to things.
Yeah.
But it is so easy to teach and get to the table. We had some friends over and we were making dinner and I just set this up and I was like, here's how you play, shake, 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 off, away you go. And they were very happy playing this together. For me, it doesn't have longevity, but I enjoy playing it. It's a real novelty. And as much as I love the packaging design for the setup, it's a really big, weird shape to have in your board game collection.
It's an inconvenient shape for a board game collection because it's like everything is just so square-ish and But I feel like you probably could have done a square shaker. Like you just really need to have the hole. I don't know if it just doesn't work as well. Or, but it also feels like a lot of the space is wasted.
Yeah, it's because it has the ruler in it, it has the board, it has a rule book. So it has a few things and the componentry is beautiful.
Oh, gorgeous. It's a gorgeous production. And
the metal pieces, all really high quality.
Yes. And I think that's what really, because even though it is very, very abstract, that's what really draws me to it. And I'm like, every time I'm playing, it's like, oh, I'm delighted to kind of have that experience, very tactile. And all the colors and the way it sort of pops against that black kind of background. I really enjoy that. So, and it plays fairly quickly as well. So it doesn't overstay its welcome.
What did you give it?
I gave this a 7.7.
A 7.7?
Yeah.
That actually shocked me.
Wow.
That is really high.
Yeah.
But it's so... You've broken me.
404 error message right now.
I just no, I want to question that because I'm really surprised because when we play it, you look like you're having fun, but you don't look like you're really having fun.
I am internally delighted. I genuinely, it's one of those that I'm just I'm not But and again, like I said, I'm not like, oh my god, like I'm not booming on the outside, but I am just genuinely delighted on the inside. Like everything about the production of it and the like, it's just I just find myself so relaxed and so like it's relaxed and both like, haha, I don't think AB's seen this. I'm gonna put my marker here and all of these flowers will be mine. So it's a nice, but it doesn't feel like aggressive. I actually do find like I am in this mythical flower laguna, if you will.
Look, I am shocked because it's so abstract, and usually I enjoy more abstract games more than you. For me, it's not tense enough. I do like
maybe why I like it. I'm like, delightful. I feel like I'm just floating on this, this sort of beautiful river.
Look, it's really beautiful and it's really innovative. So I give it a 7.1. It's a game that I'll play, I'll teach, but I'm just surprised. It doesn't sound like it's leaving our collection.
Weirdly, it was the one for the themer, not the very abstract game.
But I do love it in terms of just one of those quick fillers that you can easily teach. So that is Lacuna, and that is another 10 games rated out of our collection. We're still having so much fun with this series. So thank you everybody who's been tuning into every episode. Please let us know what games you played and love out of this group. Even though we're so slack at getting back to people in the comments, we do read every single one and we always appreciate that. So please like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.